Continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph in Meseches. This is Eruvin Daf 102a. In the Mishnah, there was a machlokas whether a person can use a bolt which has a knob on it in order to close up a door. And the Gemara now explains b'she'eno nitol be'igdo. They're arguing, the Tanoim and the Mishnah are arguing in a situation when you cannot carry it with the rope that it's attached to. Rashi over here explains kishe'en nitol be'igdo sha'achevel dak. The rope that it's hanging from is thin. V'im haya rotze litlo misham l'taltlo ideoso chevel miyad nifsak. If you would try to move this bolt with the rope would break. So Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Rabbi Eliezer holds kevon de'eno nitol be'igdo, since you can't carry it with the rope. Tehava kamisha eno kosher. It's like it's not tied at all. U'tanan l'kamon. We learned in a Mishnah later on. Nagar hamunach. If you have a bolt which is just placed on the ground, she'eno kosher bedelis, it's not tied to the door. Ein noelin bo. You're not allowed to use that to close up the door, to lock up the door. V'hainami munachu. This case also it's considered munach, and therefore it's a problem. Umisham gluster, and just because of the knob at the end, lo sharile, he says that's not enough to permit it. For Rabbi Yossi, so Rabbi Yossi holds gluster amahanyale, that the gluster, the knob at the end, does help to kavan de kli who lo have a binyan, because that turns it into a kli, and it's no longer considered a binyan. Demar savar kavan deyesh barosho glustera toras kli. All of one opinion says that since it has a knob in the end, it's considered a kli and it's mutter. Umar savar kavan deino nitol beigdo lo. The other one says since it's not able to be grabbed by the rope, it is going to be a problem. And the Mishnah says, Nagur hanigror, let's say you have, again, this is a bolt and it's dragging on the ground. Noalin bo b'mikdash, according to the Tanakama, you can use that to lock up a door in the Beis HaMikdash. Avalo b'medina, but you can't do it outside the Beis HaMikdash. V'hamunach, and if it's just laying on the ground, it's not even dragging, kan v'kan osir, then it's going to be osir in both situations. Rabbi Yehuda says, hamunach, if it's placed on the ground, mutter b'mikdash. That's actually okay in the Beis HaMikdash. V'hanigor, and if it's dragging, then b'medina. That's even okay in outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi Yehuda is in general more lenient than the Tanakama. Rashi over here says, Nagar hanigor shekasher bedelis. The case over here is it's tied to a door. Aval eno toli, but it's not hanging from the door. Shachevel aruch, because the rope is long. Mitoch shenigrar, and since it is dragging, eno nira kekasher, it doesn't appear that it's tied. Uchashein barosho gluster ka'amar. And the case over here is, we're talking about a bolt in this Mishnah, which does not have a knob at the end, so there's no way to consider it a kli in that regard. Rashi says, Noalin bo b'mikdash. Why are you allowed to do it in the Beis HaMikdash? The shvus bi'almahu de'eno bona mamish. According to the Tanakama, it's a derabanan, it's just a shvus. It's not real binyan hoel v'kasher l'kach, since it's tied for this purpose. Elahol v'nigra michsi kabona ve'en shvus derabanan v'mikdash lo gazru. It's just that it looks like bona, and there's no problem of shvus b'mikdash. V'hamunach she'eno kasher klal have a binyan mamish. If it's not tied at all, that really is binyan. For Rabbi Yehuda suffered. Now, what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Lav binyan mamishu. He says, no, even if in a situation of munach, it's not really binyan. Eladoma binyan, it's similar to binyan. Uva mikdash lo gazru shvus, and in the Beis HaMikdash, there was no gezer of shvus. And again, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's nigror, that's enough to allow it everywhere. Gemara says, Toner Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa. Ezeo nagor hanigror shenoalin b'mikdash avalo b'medina. What is considered a bolt which is dragging, which you can use in the Beis HaMikdash, but not outside the Beis HaMikdash? Kol shekasher v'toloi v'rosho echon magil la'aretz. If it's tied up, but part of it is still touching the ground. It's hanging, but it's dragging on the ground. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ze'af b'medina mutter. This is permitted even outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Because again, if it's tied, that's enough of a heter. Ela'ezo nagor shenoalin b'mikdash avalo b'medina. What's the case where you can use it in the Beis HaMikdash and not outside of the Beis HaMikdash? Kol she'eno lo kasher v'lo toloi. That's in a situation where it's not tied, it's not hanging. The shamto ma'nicho b'karen zav. It's just sitting in a corner. In that situation, that's a situation where in the Beis HaMikdash, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be a problem. In the Medina, it's going to be a problem, but in the Beis HaMikdash, it's going to be okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda b'nigror, specifically in the situation where it's dragging. And Rashi over here explains, halacha Rabbi Yehuda b'nigror demutter afilu b'medina. If you have it tied, but it's dragging on the ground, it's mutter even outside the mikdash. Avolo b'munach, but if it's placed on the ground, where Rabbi Yehuda said we're lenient in the Beis HaMikdash, that we don't paskin like. The sharile Rabbi Yehuda b'mikdash. In that case, when it's munach, Rabbi Yehuda said it's permitted in the Beis HaMikdash. Less hilchasa kavase. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda in that regard. The keman sheino kasher shem binyan gomerhu. Sheino kasher sham binyan gomerhu. Since it's not tied, it is a full-fledged binyan, bona fide. Keshar nigarim shenoatzim b'kosalim v'abona kol shuchayiv. Any building a person does is chayiv d'oraisa. Umalacha d'oraisa lohutra b'mikdash. You can't do malachas d'oraisa in the Beis HaMikdash chutz, with the exception of mehakrabas tamidin, musafin, v'karbanos tzibor, shedochenes haShabbos, migzeres hakosef. Certain karbanos that you're allowed to bring in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos, that's a gzeres hakosef, but other than that, you're not. So the point is that Shmuel is ruling leniently like Rabbi Yehuda, specifically in a situation where it's tied and dragging on the ground. You can be lenient even outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Amar Rava, and Rava says on that, Vushakasher bedelis, it has to at least be tied to the door. Rashi over here says, Vushakasher bedelis atzma demukach shaber v'lo shakasher b'mezuzah. It can't be tied to the door posts. It has to be tied to the door itself. Only in such a situation, then it's clear that it's a component of the door, and only in that situation it's okay. So the Gemara says, Ini, is that really true? But Rabbi Tavla went to Mechuza, v'chaza lahu dahavitali bivr dedasha, and he saw that there was a particular nagar, and it was not tied to the door itself, it was tied to the crossbeam of the door. V'lo amar lahu v'lo midi, he didn't say anything, apparently it was fine. So the Gemara says, Ahu nital be'igdo have. No, in that particular case, it was tied with a very strong rope, so again, it was clear that it was a part of the door. It doesn't look like binyan. Ravavya Ravavya went to Nardoi. Begemi. He saw that a particular person used a reed in order to tie the bolt. Amar Dain lo nitrok. He said this is not going to be proper for closing the door because it's not really tied well. If it's not tied well, the tie is as if it's not there at all. Boy, Rabbi Zera asked, Nikmaz mahu, what would be the halacha if it's nikmaz? And Rashi explains, Shenichnas hanagor bechor h'iskopa v'nifchos oso achor b'yotze hanagor l'tzara karka v'noitz b'karka. When you put the nagor into the threshold over there, it actually goes all the way through and it actually digs into the ground. That's nikmaz. So Rabbi Zera wanted to know, is that okay or not? Amar Rav Yosef says, Maiti boile. What's his question? Lo shmiya lehadatanya. Did Rabbi Zera not hear the following brisa? Nishmat aser. If it says nishmat, means that the rope actually broke. So in such a situation, it's aser. Nikmaz mutter, but in the case of nikmaz where it's sticking in the ground, it is okay. Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Nikmaz afal pisha, nishmat aser. No, even nikmaz is going to be aser. V'yamar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, and Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Yehuda benikmaz. The halacha is indeed like Rabbi Yehuda, that we are strict in this case. V'tayim amayim, what's the reason why we're strict? Amar Abaya says, Mishum demichzi kabona, because if the bolt is already digging into the ground, that already appears more like bona, and so it's a problem. And the Gemara says, Boy minei Rav Nechumi bar Zechariah me Abaya. Rav Nechumi bar Zechariah asked Abaya the following question: Asalo beis yad mao. If he put on the bolt, he put a handle on the bolt, what would be the halacha? Amar Lei said to him, Buchno kamrit. That basically turns it into a pestle. Again, you can use it to crush wheat and spices. It's going to be considered a kli, not going to be a problem. Itmar was taught. Amar Rav Nechumi bar Ada. Rav Nechumi bar Ada said, Asalo beis yad mutter. Again, if you put a handle on it, it's going to be mutter. Hausha Risa dehava be Rabbi Pedas. There was a certain beam in the house of Rabbi Pedas. It took 10 people in order to lift it. V'shadu la adasha, and they put it by the door in order to close up the door. V'lo amar luhu v'lo midi. He didn't say anything about it. Amar, he said, Torah's kli oleh. That's considered a kli. It's not a problem at all. Hahi asisa dehavis be Mar Shmuel. There was a mortar in the house of Mar Shmuel. Dahav mechazeges adriba. It held, it's a measurement, a lesach of wheat. Shara Mar Shmuel lemishti adasha. Again, Mar Shmuel allowed them to put it by the doorway. Amar Torah's kli oleh. He said it's considered a kli, so it's not going to be a problem. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Shalach le Rami bar Yechezkel Rav Amram. Rami bar Yechezkel sent Rav Amram the following: Neimolon mar mehalin mili maliyasa da'amrit lon mishmei deravasi bechipi diarba. Tell us some nice things that were said in the name of Ravasi regarding the arches of a boat. Shalach lehachi, so he sent him the following. Amar Ravasi said, Hani kipi diarba, if you have these arches of a boat, bisman sheyesh bo en tefach, if they are a tefach large, inami ein bo en tefach, or even if they're not a tefach, however, ve'ein bein zeh lo zeh shlosha, but they're not between them, is not 3 tvachim, l'mocher, maybe machzeles, a person can bring the next day on Shabbos, you can take a mat, upores alein, and spread it on them. What they used to do is, they would spread these mats on the arches of the ship to protect them from the elements, and you're allowed to do that even on Shabbos. My time, what's the reason? Mosif alo alaraihu v'shaper dami. You're really just adding, the arches themselves are already considered an oel arai, so you're just adding to an oel that's already there, which is fine on Shabbos. The Gemara says, Hanu dichri dehavale Rav Huna, there were some rams that Rav Huna had, the v'yamama bo tula, in the daytime they needed shade, uvalelia bo avira, at night they needed some air, they needed to be cooler. Asalakame de Rav, so he came before Rav, he wanted to know what he could do with these on Shabbos. Amar le, he said, Zil kroch budya. Rashi over here explains, kroch budya, keshe tesalik hamachzelas me'alein, lifnos erev Shabbos, al tesal kena kula. when you remove the mats Erev Shabbos, don't remove the whole thing. Kula misham, don't remove it all from there. Leave a tefach spread out to lahav olah shem oel. That way it's going to be called an oel, and again, that way v'shayir bo tefach. If you leave a tefach, lamachar pashto mosef alo oel arayhu v'shaper dami. Then the next day when you spread it, you're just adding to an oel aray, and it's not going to be a problem. Amar Rav mishum Rav Yechia. Rav said in the name of Rav Yechia, vilon, if you spread a curtain, mutter l'netoso, mutter l'parko b'Shabbos, you can spread it out and you can wrap it up on Shabbos. It's not going to be a problem. Rashi says vilon keneged hapesach l'tznius. It's a curtain that you put on a door for privacy purposes. Mutter l'netoso the lav oelu. It's not considered an oel. The lo kaviyah hasam. It's not fixed over there. L'kein darko l'nasun u'listale kedelos bi'alma. It's something that's always taken off, put back on, so it's not going to problem. Just like any other door that you open and close, which also is of course not a problem on Shabbos. And the Gemara says, Kilas chasanim, if you have, this is the canopy that you have over a bed, mutter lefarko v'lentosa b'Shabbos, you're allowed to take that as well, take it off, put it back on Shabbos. Rashi says, Kilas chasanim, lav oelu, it's not considered an oel, mevnesha ein lo gag l'mala rochav tefach, because it's a canopy over a bed, but it doesn't have a roof of a tefach over it, mevneshi nasuna b'shipua, because it's put in a slant. V'hiyariya shaparsin saviv l'mita liyashin, you used to put it around the bed in order to sleep, looked basically like that, like a slanted roof. So that's okay to put up and take down on Shabbos. Amar Rav Sheshes b'rei Ravidi. Rav Sheshes, the son of Ravidi, said, Lo amar ela she'ein begago tefach. That's only true, as we said, if it's not a tefach on top. Avol yesh begago tefach aser. If it's a tefach on top, it's a problem. Gemara says, V'chein begago tefach. And even in a situation where it's not a tefach on top, Lo amar ela she'ein bepachos mishlosha samach legag tefach. It's only okay if within 3 tvachim of the top, you don't have a tefach wide. But if within 3 tvachim of the top, it's going to be a tefach wide, then also it's considered that it's spread out a tefach on top. And the Gemara says, and even in a situation where even within 3 tvachim to the top, it's not a tefach, even in that particular situation, still it's only okay, ela she'ein, only in a situation where it's not. Rashi over here says, she'ein v'pachos mishlosha samach legag tefach, shenesuna balachson kotzer, shekashata moded roch v'lamata mishlosh legag. If you measure the width, even going down within 3 tvachim, ein bo rochav tefach. It's not going to be a tefach wide. Tavekule dofen ve'ein kano al klal. In that situation, it's all considered walls. It's not considered a roof at all. Aval herchiva tefach b'soch shlosh legaga. But if it gets to be a tefach wide within 3 tvachim from the top, ki ilu gaga tefach dami v'asul into. So that's already as if it's a tefach wide on top, and it's going to be a problem. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Beis Amud Beis.